welcome to another video. In this segment I'm going to cover the concept of gesso, what is gesso and why we apply it on the canvas, and I'm actually go ahead and use this brush to put a coat or two of gesso over this canvas so you can see how it is applied and what to expect from it, why we apply it, and basically everything you need to know as a beginner artist about gesso. This is gesso, and gesso basically is acrylic primer, acrylic white paint. Well, they don't call it paint, they call it primer, but basically it's acrylic polymer plus white pigment. Comes in different forms, shapes. This is a half-gallon can. This is another brand. I believe this is by Artist Loft. This is also acrylic gesso, white gesso. All right. The reason you apply gesso onto a canvas is to have a better, smoother surface to paint on. So that's the primary reason. On primed canvas, as I'm going to show you over here in the back of this canvas, unprimed canvas is a little rough, and if you want to use expensive paint to paint on this, you're going to be using a lot of paint. So having a primed surface like primed with gesso makes it easier to paint. That's one reason. Okay, and another reason is that if you use oil rather than acrylic, oil paint on an unprimed canvas, because of the acidity of oil paint or some other properties of it, I'm not 100% sure, it will eventually damage the canvas. So you need a buffer between the rough canvas, the raw linen, the fabric, and the oil paint, and that would be the gesso. Now if you buy canvases in art stores, you know, Michael's, Hobby Lobby, or Blick, or any other stores, they usually come primed, and this is good enough for beginner artists. Okay, if you're a beginner artist, this is good enough. Don't get overwhelmed, don't go invest on gesso and double prime every canvas. This is more for more advanced artists if they want to do fine, you know, details and portraits and stuff like that, and this canvas is a bit too rough for them, so they put a second coat or third coat of this primer on it. So this is primed once. If you go ahead and apply gesso over this, it will be double primed. If you let it dry and apply again, it will be triple primed. Now these canvases can come in black, and this is black gesso. Okay, so it's primed with black gesso. Just because it's black, you don't have to go ahead prime it. It is primed. Okay, applying gesso is very easy. You could either use a large 2-inch brush. If you're comfortable with the 1-inch brush, that's what I'll be using. Or you could even go ahead, go to an art store and buy a gesso brush. Okay, that's up to you. If you apply a lot of gessos over your canvases, you can invest on a gesso brush, but you don't have to. You really don't have to. All right, so that's why we apply gesso over the canvas. Makes it easier to paint, makes it easier for the canvas to accept paint, and in case of oil medium, you need a buffer between the canvas and the oil paint, because the oil paint eventually in the long term it will damage the canvas. All right, so we're going to go ahead, pick up some gesso and this brush, and you can do crisscross motion or side to side motion, it doesn't really matter, and apply your gesso over your canvas. And we are getting a fairly good coverage with this. If you find your gesso to be a little more liquidy, watery rather, and it doesn't give you good coverage, you could let it dry and apply the second coat. And as I mentioned, if you buy the canvas from store, it's already primed. You don't have to worry about priming it as a beginner artist. But in case you need to prime a canvas, this is how it's done. So I'm going side to side over here. You can start from one corner, go to the other. You could do crisscross motion. Whatever motion is your motion, whatever you like. And just like that, you can cover the whole canvas, let it dry. You have the option to sand it and then apply the second coat, or just go ahead and apply the second coat. Again, I don't want to make it too complicated for beginner artists. Okay, and this step is not mandatory if you buy a canvas from store. If you buy this, go ahead and paint on it. You don't need to do double prime it. It's really not necessary because you're practicing. This is your first painting or your second painting. You're really practicing. If you're creating a painting that is going to a gallery, or you are good enough that you want to start selling your painting, then obviously you're not watching this video. Then the point is moot. If you're watching this video, then chances are you are starting to paint, you're practicing. And if you're asking me, you don't need to double coat or double prime a practice canvas. But it's good to know what it is and how it's done. I'm just gonna go ahead and continue this process. I'm gonna let this dry and I'm gonna come back to it, apply my second coat, and apply the second coat because this is a recycled canvas and I want to cover all those dark spots. And before I interrupt the video over here, I don't know if I mentioned it in the beginning of the video. If I did, it's worth mentioning again. If I haven't, let me just go ahead and cover that area as well. Don't confuse gesso with liquid white. Gesso is water-based, acrylic base, and it's used to basically prime the canvas before you paint on it. Whether you use oil or acrylic, it doesn't matter. Liquid white is oil-based, and the reason you use liquid white is to make the oil paint glide over the canvas, basically moving the paint easier on the canvas, and you can quickly do a painting wet on wet technique. So don't confuse the two. And the fingerprint test that they do with liquid white to see if they have too much of it or right amount of it on the canvas, that fingerprint test doesn't apply to gesso. You don't have to worry about it. You can apply, as I said, 2, 3, 4 coats. It dries quickly, and once it dries, so it doesn't interfere with your painting. If you have too much liquid white, which is again oil based, then it interferes with your painting because you have too much oil on the canvas. So that fingerprint test only works with liquid white, not gesso. Don't confuse the two, okay? So I'm going to go ahead, let this dry. I'm going to go ahead, apply the second coat, which is basically the same thing, and then show you the finished results.
A few moments later.
Alright, so I went ahead and applied the second coat of gesso, and the canvas is pretty much covered. It's good enough for me. I can go ahead and sand some of the imperfections here and there, some of the roughness with the sandpaper, just to create a little smoother surface to paint on. But again, it's not mandatory, whatever. And that would be basically applying gesso. I have gesso all over my fingers, but that's not a problem. If it happens to you too, you can easily wash this with soap and water, warm water and some soap. It will make it go away. And very easily you can go ahead, double prime your canvas. Not a big deal. Use any brushes you have. Again, not a big deal. I guess we covered whatever we intended to cover. We mentioned liquid white, we mentioned gesso, the difference, how the canvas comes when you buy it in the store, on prime side and prime side. Gesso comes in two colors, white gesso, black gesso. And if you have any friend, family, you know anybody, you meet someone on social media and they interested in this basic videos, please share, refer, and I really appreciate every referral, every sharing of the videos. It really helps the channel. Thank you very much, and I hope you come back for more videos. Time to wash my hands. Bye bye.